President Trump has reached some sort of deal with China regarding TikTok. Before I get started here, I'm going to say that I'm not one of those send this to your congressman guys, but send this video to your congressman. This will probably be watched by a lot of new people, so allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ryan McBeth. I'm a software engineer, I'm a novelist, I'm an intelligence analyst for Newsmax, mainly on drone and cybersecurity topics. I go to bed and I wake up in the morning thinking about how China can destroy us with TikTok. The deal the president has made with China regarding TikTok doesn't seem like it actually resolves TikTok's fundamental problem. And I've been watching this slow motion standoff between TikTok, ByteDance, the US government, and China for a couple of years now. It's always been pitched as like this data privacy fight or maybe like an intellectual property risk, but make no mistake about it, it's about power. It's about influence. It's about something even more dangerous than those things. I have called TikTok a weapon system before because in 2025, that's exactly how we need to think about platforms that can steer billions of eyeballs toward different narratives. And these systems can also provide kinetic effects, meaning actual physical outcomes in the real world. As in the case of the MV Cape Orlando, where weak-minded college students glued themselves to the side of the ship, thinking that it was carrying weapons bound for Israel. So, as of September 20th, 2025, the day I'm recording this, where are we actually? Who holds the cards here? What is this deal, and is it enough? In April of 2024, Congress passed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Advisory Controlled Applications Act. I'm going to call that PAFACA. Under PAFACA, apps defined as foreign adversary controlled have to divest from foreign control or face a ban. ByteDance, which is TikTok's parent, was explicitly named. And just as a side note, even China bans TikTok. You can't even get TikTok in China. You can kind of get something that's a little bit different, but you can't actually get TikTok. So even China bans TikTok. What does that say about what China is feeding us? Now, the relevant deadline for divestment was originally January 18th, 2025. The Supreme Court upheld PAFACA in TikTok versus Garland in January of 2025, rejecting First Amendment arguments that the law is unconstitutional. This sets the legal force. The U.S. can lawfully force a sale or ban, and that law is on the books. But law and enforcement of that law are two different things. Now, let's talk about what's been done so far. After the Supreme Court, what happened? Applications were temporarily forced offline around the January deadline, but then things kind of got chaotic. President Trump, upon returning to the presidency, signed executive orders delaying enforcement multiple times. I disagree with this. I think about half my comment section are all people saying, "When are you going to criticize Trump?" I criticize Trump plenty. I just stay in my lane, and I only talk about stuff I know about. You know, you don't actually have to have an opinion about everything. Think of that Dave Chappelle skit about Ja Rule.
I remember right around September 11th, Ja Rule was on MTV. That's what they said. They said, "We got Ja Rule on the phone. Let's see what Ja's thoughts are on this tragedy." Oh my God, this is terrible. Could somebody please find Ja Rule? Where is Ja?
There are two here. President Trump has consistently made the wrong decision about TikTok, extending it. And I have specifically said this is bad. The most recent extension pushes the deadline for TikTok's ban to December 16th, 2025. That gives more time for negotiation. So what's this deal or framework? What's proposed? What's unresolved? Here's where it gets tricky. There is a framework, but it's ambiguous and that's likely intentional. What seems to be agreed upon is this. There's some sort of divestment or ownership. ByteDance will reduce its ownership in TikTok, U.S. operations below 20%. U.S. companies get majority control of TikTok. Then U.S. data sovereignty. There's U.S. data that's only going to be held on U.S. servers under U.S. control or at least heavily regulated, so the Chinese Communist Party cannot access user data. Now, the real question here is, what happens with the recommendation algorithm? Because that's the secret sauce. Under the framework, ByteDance might license out the algorithm. This is the software that recommends stuff or maybe it holds some sort of intellectual property control over that algorithm without fully turning over or rewriting the algorithm. I haven't seen any data on this. I have no idea what's going on with that algorithm, and the algorithm is the most important thing. Because if the US does not have control over the recommendation algorithm, then the Chinese Communist Party can influence what Americans are seeing, and that's the biggest problem. This is not a Republican thing, this is not a Democrat thing, this is not a Trump thing. This is a survival of the United States thing. I am 100% serious about that. Now, I suppose they can do something where like the recommendation algorithm lives on Chinese servers and American servers do an API call to the Chinese server, but that's a technical thing. What's not decided is how much operational control the US has over moderation, content decisions, algorithm tuning, etc. If China retains influence over how content is surfaced, like in the For You page, it's still a vulnerability. This exact structure of the US entity, like who owns what part, who sits on the board, how independent is US oversight, is there a government observer, are there non-Chinese board seats, how enforceable are the agreements? We don't know any of that stuff. And what happens if China doesn't follow through? Does someone else assert control? What enforcement penalties are there if China doesn't play ball? Now, whether or not the algorithm licensing approach satisfies the original law under PFACA, or whether Congress or the courts will challenge it, it doesn't, I don't really know. So why do I call TikTok a weapons system? I've used this phrase before very deliberately with very good reason. TikTok is not just an app. It is a platform of influence and a weapons system. 170 million Americans use it. The recommendation algorithm doesn't just reflect what users like. It shapes what millions see, whether it's bias, incentive, external pressures. The algorithm forces people to show what it wants those people to see. If a foreign adversary can manipulate that recommendation algorithm either by hiding content, amplifying some content, or suppressing other content, that's influence. And influence is a tool in geopolitical competition. People like to say, oh, TikTok can steal data. Any platform can steal data. Big deal. The problem is that we have a literal weapons system that has been used for kinetic strikes, such as the boarding of the MV Cape Orlando. When we go to war with China, they will use it to convince American college students to perform terroristic acts, just like we saw in Gaza. They will say, Taiwan actually wants to rejoin China, and America is preventing it because they're capitalist, colonialist, imperialists who will fight to the last Taiwanese. So go stand in front of an army convoy. Go glue yourself to the side of a Navy ship that's headed toward Taiwan. Go protest at a congressman's office. And even if you don't give a crap about Taiwan, Mr. or Mrs. Congressman, think about this instead. If you support something that China is against, like a new factory in your town or a mine that's against Chinese interests, they will target you. TikTok can be used to support an opponent during your re-election, or it can be used to convince a bunch of unstable people to commit a kinetic action against you. That algorithm can find those unstable people. Where have we seen that before? Now imagine that on a state-sponsored level. Kind of scary, huh? And we're just letting it happen. Data is fuel. Knowing what Americans watch, how long, their preferences, their private interests. It gives us power to tail or influence ads, targeted content, even political or social manipulation. Not everyone's going to glue themselves to the side of the ship. But enough useful idiots will start reposting the message because they want to ride the trend, and that'll get their videos seen and they'll get famous. So even if ByteDance doesn't directly hand data to the Chinese Communist Party, the architecture of control creates potential conduits for influence. This makes TikTok more than just entertainment. It is part of 21st century warfare, which will increasingly have information and perception at the core. All right, so where do we start? Where do we go? All right. Putting it all together, here's where we are. There is a framework deal. The U.S. administration claims they reached an agreement in principle with China to allow TikTok to operate in the U.S. under new ownership structures. President Trump and President Xi have had a conversation, and they're planning to finalize some part of this deal. It appears that China has signaled approval in some form, at least they haven't rejected the framework. But I'll tell you this, without control of the algorithm, all of this is just theater. It's all just theater. It is my hope that Congress will stand up to the president if this deal does not include the recommendation algorithm, but while we're dreaming, I want a pony. If this sounds like we're dealing with a national security issue more than social media, it's because we are. And it's honestly as simple as that. TikTok is a weapons system. You know, I'm turning 50 this month, and I want to raise $100,000 for my 50th birthday so my friend Johnny Rogers can drive around Ukraine in a van giving out non-lethal aid. Click below to donate. Here's a video from Johnny to explain. Believe it or not, on September 25th, this sexy pile of man candy is turning 50. And for my birthday, I don't want any presents. Instead, I want you to donate to Help Is On The Way UA. My friend Johnny Rogers essentially drives around Ukraine in a van giving out non-lethal aid. Yes, I still have a security clearance. I can't donate any lethal aid, but Johnny Rogers has a special message for you.
Thank you so much for everything you guys do to support me. You make this possible. You help me help these guys. Thank you so much, Ryan McBeth, for the shout out. You make this possible. Every little donation counts. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow me. Go to helpisontheWayUA.com today. Do a donation. And follow Ryan, he's a great guy, and Ukrainian Relief Fund on Instagram. Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini!
Heroям slava! My goal here is $100,000. You can donate at the link below. Every dollar helps.